They say every tragedy ends in silence, but sometimes silence is not an ending. It's the space where a new story learns how to breathe. Evelyn Hart woke up 2 months later, in a world that still called her name but forgot to tell her why. Her husband's face was familiar only by shape. Her house felt staged, like someone had rehearsed her life without her. The fire on the pillow had gone out, but something smoldered under the ashes. Not rage, not love, something stranger mercy trying to find its language. When memory leaves, what does love owe you? And when love returns, what does it expect in exchange? This is the second act of the story, not about falling apart, but about learning how to stay when staying feels like an act of faith. The discharge papers are thin, as if the hospital expects her to fold them into a paper boat and sail away. Outside, the November air has that bright, metallic quality of a day that wants to look cleaner than it feels. Evelyn Hart stands on the curb with a tote of clothes she doesn't recognize and a body that fits her name, but not her history. Ryan pulls the car up with a carefulness that feels newly learned. He steps out, opens her door, and for half a second, they both forget which choreography belongs to strangers and which belongs to a marriage. He offers a hand. She takes it. The contact is brief, polite, unclaimed. Margaret Blake is already in the back seat, a bouquet of practicalities, water, ginger candies, a folded cardigan, a Tupperware of chicken soup. Her perfume is white tea and a century of yes. Seatbelt, Margaret says, not unkindly. She clips it in herself, as if fastening a promise that can't be broken if it clicks. Evelyn watches the hospital shrink in the rearview mirror. A pair of med students on the sidewalk argue over lunch. A man in a red scarf laughs into his phone. The world continues in its ordinary tense. Hers, stubbornly, does not. 30 days, Margaret says, as if reading from a small, private contract. That's all I'm asking. I'm going to stay with you two for 1 month. We'll cook. We'll sleep. We'll let the quiet put you back together. Mom. Ryan exhales, a warning folded inside a sun. Margaret ignores it. Think of it as physical therapy for the heart. Evelyn stares out the window. The city keeps handing her postcards of a life she cannot mail back to herself, the bakery with the blue door. A florist showing peonies to a little girl. A man walking a dog that knows every crack in the sidewalk by scent alone. What if I don't fit back where I came from? Evelyn says, almost to the glass. Then the house changes shape. Margaret answers. Ryan glances at her, then back to the road. The sunlight cuts across his jaw, and for a moment, she sees only the outline, a man who once belonged to her story, the details, the sentiment gone or in hiding. Memory is an animal. It returns only when it feels safe. Their building greets them with polished concrete and an elevator that hums like a throat clearing. On the 12th floor, the hallway is lemon-scented, the way luxury often is. Ryan unlocks the door and steps aside, offering passage to the home of a woman who doesn't exist anymore. She steps in. The place has the gentle perfection of a staged photograph. A gray sofa, a throw blanket that insists it was never thrown, a bookshelf curated to suggest that its owners read deeply and argue softly, a wedding photo, two people on a cliff in Carmel, laughing into wind that can't mess anything up. Evelyn studies the frame, as if an angle will unlock a password. Was I happy that day? You were loud about it, Ryan says, a ghost of a smile. Margaret rolls her suitcase toward the guest room, and you two fought about the cake flavor the night before, but ended up choosing both. That's my favorite kind of marriage, one that refuses false scarcity. Evelyn peels her gaze away from the photograph and moves through the rooms as if she's touching the edges of a map. The kitchen is a tidy grid of intention. Her name is on a ceramic mug in a cursive she doesn't recognize as her own. Someone she liked lemon. Apparently, there are lemon zesters, lemon-shaped salt shakers, a row of preserved lemons glowing like small suns in a jar. Would you like a tour? Ryan asks carefully, as though inviting her into a museum where she is both the patron and the exhibit. I'll find it, she says. It'll feel earned that way. He nods, swallows something hard, and puts her tote on the counter. Your clothes, he says, and the keys. There's a spare set in the bowl with the tortoiseshell marbling. You always put your keys there, always, she repeats, tasting the word like a foreign candy. Margaret reappears, sleeves rolled to the elbows. In her natural habitat, benevolent command. Dinner at 7, she announces. And by dinner, I mean a table, not a couch. A table is an argument with loneliness that we win. That's a bit much for the first night, Ryan says, a reflex of the man who works late and eats standing at the kitchen island, as if seated would be a confession, not a suggestion. Darling, Margaret replies, a rule, new house rules, family dinner at 7. No phones on the table, candles even if no occasion. If love is to be remembered, it must be practiced. Evelyn looks at the dining table. It's an elegant piece of walnut with chairs that insist on posture. It feels ceremonial in a way that makes her throat ache. She had thought she only lost events. She hadn't realized she might have lost rituals. She wanders into the bedroom. The bed is made with a crispness that says hotel more than home. The pillows stacked in the specific geometry of magazines. She runs a hand over the duvet. In the closet, her clothes hang like well-behaved citizens. She touches a soft, cream sweater. A scent rises linen, rain, and the suggestion of late-night shampoo. Her fingers stutter at the shoulder seam, as if some ghost of muscle memory expects to feel a repair where once there was a tear. There isn't. In the bathroom, a toothbrush stands in a porcelain cup. She stares at it as if it might testify. On the vanity, a small bottle labeled E in gold. Eye cream perfume. She uncaps it and takes a breath. Neroli. Something she's sure she chose. She looks herself in the mirror. The face too familiar to be trusted. There's a scar near her temple, delicate as a watermark. The doctor had said it would fade. Doctors love to predict the retreat of things. They rarely speak of what advances when memory does not. The patience, the fear, the odd gratitude for honest emptiness. Eve Ryan's voice arrives from the doorway, careful not to enter. If you want to rest before dinner, I'd like to work, she says, surprising them both. By work, I mean fold something or label drawers. I want to earn the room I'll sleep in. He nods too quickly. Okay, the linen closet is alphabetized. You did that, but we can reorganize. Or we could go to the store for lemons. We're never mind. We have so many. She almost laughs. It startles her, the ease of it. She carries a stack of towels out of the closet, and for a moment they bump shoulders like commuters. The contact is a live wire. They both pretend it isn't. At 6:58 p.m., the table glows. Margaret has set it with articled precision ceramic plates, the color of rain. Linen napkins knotted like the gentlest nooses. 2 candles flanking a bowl of late tomatoes. She's made soup from her Tupperware offering, added bread that snaps when you break it, and a salad that looks like it belongs to people who still believe in vitamins. Evelyn sits. Ryan sits. They stare at their hands like neutral countries at a summit. To the ordinary, Margaret declares, lifting her water glass, which carries more weight than vows do. They drink. The soup steams a memory of chicken that had a good life. Ryan passes the bread. Their fingers don't touch. Evelyn fills everyone's water as if hydrating the scene itself. So, Margaret says, as if she's asking about the weather, we'll try an experiment for 1 month. We will treat 7 o'clock as sacred. You, she nods at her son, will be home before 7. When we fail politely and try again the next day. I can rearrange some things, Ryan says, but he says it like a man standing in front of a dam, promising to reroute the river. Margaret smiles with the kind of love that forgives slowly because it has the luxury of certainty. You will, darling, because you'll want to, not because I ask. Evelyn sips her soup. It's good, not extraordinary good, in the way a dependable friend is. What if I don't remember liking any of this, she asks. Then you discover what the new you likes, Margaret says, and we make space for her. Ryan breathes out, the kind of sound a man makes when he's been holding his breath for longer than one day. What do you like? He asks Evelyn, like a man rehearsing humility. Silence, she says, then reconsiders. No, silence that isn't loaded. Music when I do the dishes. Candles that smell like rain, not vanilla that lies about dessert. And honesty that doesn't need a headline. He nods, as if she's given him instructions he can live by. I can do that. She looks at him. Can you? There's no sharpness in it, only an earnest question that weighs what it asks. He doesn't answer. He breaks bread instead, and that is perhaps its own reply. They do not talk about the accident. They do not talk about the months before it, the whispered allegations, the hungry cameras, the words that turned their home into a courthouse. They talk about the neighbor's new puppy, a cloud with opinions. Margaret says, about a bakery that burns the sugar just enough, about the way the city is better at sunrise than at noon. Halfway through dinner, a phone buzzes. The sound lands like a stone. Ryan looks at his pocket and then at his mother. He doesn't reach for it. Good. Margaret says, let it be ignored. If it's urgent, it will show up at the door. If it's not, it can learn patience. She turns to Evelyn. How's the soup? It tastes like someone loves me, Evelyn says before she can dress the sentence. Margaret's eyes grow glassy. Then we are already winning. After dinner, Margaret insists on a walk around the block. The stomach needs air, she says, and the heart needs proofs, she adds, meaning proof, but always favoring the plural for love. They move through the quiet grid of streets like a small, purposeful parade. The sky is a velvet that refuses to be owned. In the grocery window, a sign reads, Winter citrus coming soon. Evelyn smiles at the idea of seasons announcing themselves. She looks at Ryan's hands, tucked in his coat pockets. Once, those hands kept her warm. She knows this not by memory, but by a logic the body practices without asking permission. Will people know me? She asks, surprising herself. On the street, from the story. Ryan's jaw registers a flinch. Some will, most won't. In this city, anonymity is a kindness we pay forward. Margaret takes her arm. If anyone is cruel, look at me. I'll be the mirror that says their words don't stick. Evelyn nods. She's grateful in a way that has no performative aspect. It is quiet, internal, practical, like socks. They pass a cafe with a signboard that reads, "Try again coffee," another that says, "Breakfast all day." The world keeps offering metaphors and carbohydrates. She files them away for later, like receipts for a life she plans to audit when the fog lifts. Back home, Margaret disappears into the guest room with a mystery novel and the energy of a general pretending to nap. Ryan clears the table. Evelyn joins him, unbidden. They fall into a domestic choreography too efficient to be newly learned. He scrapes plates. She stacks. He rinses. She loads. The dishwasher accepts their truce with a sound like a soft tide. At the sink, he rolls up his sleeves. Dishwater, suds, the gentle argument of plates and ceramic. He looks good like this useful, without the armor of boardroom lighting. "You used to hate when I washed like this," he says, a half smile. "Said I splashed too much." That it was evidence of a chaotic mind. Did I? She laughs, surprised again at her own lightness. Then maybe I was wrong, or maybe I had a point. They stand shoulder to shoulder in the glow of the under-cabinet light. There is a hum the house makes when it's almost happy. "Tomorrow," she says, "I'd like to go through the closets. I want to know what I chose before and what I'll choose now. I'll be home at 6. He says too quickly, "We can do it together." She nods, wary of promises made in good lighting. 7, she says, a gentle correction. Dinner, right. He dries his hands. 7. They drift to the living room. The couch remains a formal stranger, so they choose the floor. They sit with their backs against the sofa, like teenagers avoiding the intensity of furniture. A playlist plays instrumentals. Rain somewhere far away. A piano that seems to have grown up in a house with good parents. "Can I ask something?" he says. "Ask." When you look at me, do you feel anything that belongs to before? She considers. Honesty is a surgery she can perform now without anesthesia, because numbness is a mercy. "Not the way you want me to," she says, "but I feel something I trust. It's not nostalgia. It's not debt. It's potential that doesn't frighten me." He nods and closes his eyes for a second, as if receiving a benediction. "Can I ask something?" she counters. "Of course. Who was I? Right before the accident, not the version on paper, not the version on camera, The one who put the lemons in the jar. Was she kind? He swallows. The answer takes the long way to his mouth. She was trying, he says. Sometimes trying makes you sharp. Sometimes it makes you soft. You were both. And you, I was proud, he says plainly, and tired. Pride and fatigue make strange decisions together. She holds his gaze until he looks away, and in that evasion she reads more than if he'd confessed for an hour. At 10, the apartment sunders itself into rooms again. Margaret's bedside lamp glows like a vigilant moon. In their bedroom, the ritual of sleep is a script she has forgotten. She changes into a cotton shirt that could belong to anyone. Ryan takes the couch without ceremony, as if the couch is happy to have him back. He stands at the doorway, hovers. Do you need anything, he asks. Only time, she says, then softens it, and a glass of water. He brings it, sets it on the nightstand, and notices the way her fingers hesitate over the lamp switch, as if she expects the dark to bite. Leave it on, he offers, just for tonight. She nods. He steps away but stops. An orbit recalculating. Eve. Good night. Ryan, she says, gentle, final, a kindness that protects them both. Good night, he answers, carrying a word that wants to be larger than itself. She lies back. The pillow has that small, human heat that gives the episode its name. The ceiling learns her silhouette again. From the living room, a couch sighs under the weight of a man rediscovering humility. Morning enters the apartment shyly, a pale ribbon of light testing the edges of the curtains as if asking permission to touch the day. The air has that faint hotel scent left over from the night before laundered sheets, lemon cleaner, and the whisper of something new pretending to be routine. In the kitchen, the French press sulks beside a kettle and a bowl of lemons that look like small suns disciplined into stillness. Evelyn wakes with the peculiar ache of a body that slept but didn't rest. The pillow carries the ghost of her shape, as if she is something to be traced rather than remembered. When she sits up, the room rearranges itself into an inventory wardrobe, window, the book on the nightstand with a bookmark she didn't place, a sweater folded too neatly to be loved, a sound from the kitchen ceramic against wood, a drawer that knows where it lives. She slips from bed and walks barefoot down the hall. The floor is cool enough to make honesty of her steps. Ryan stands at the counter with his sleeves rolled and concentration arranged on his face like a new habit. He depresses the plunger of the French press as if lowering a flag. His hair is unruly in a way that feels unguarded. When he turns, surprise flickers and then organizes itself into gentleness. Good morning, he says. She tries the words on her tongue. Is it? It could be, he answers and pours. He hands her the mug with the letter E in gold ceramic warm, handle aligned to the right, like he remembers she is right-handed. She doesn't remember that, but her hand does. It receives what it recognizes. The first sip tastes like a promise, filtered through doubt. Margaret arrives in a robe the color of storm clouds, pretending not to mean it. Peppermint steam rises from her cup. She holds it like a little lantern for the soul. I have assessed the morning, she announces, and it will do. 8 out of 10 for light, 10 out of 10 for intention. Evelyn smiles without permission. You grade mornings. Someone has to. Otherwise, they get away with mediocrity. Margaret taps a folded sheet of paper on the table. Groceries, a few errands, a very forgiving schedule. Today is not for achievement. It is for practice. Ryan glances at the list. Mom, don't. Mom, me. Darling, we have 1 month to teach your home to behave like a marriage. It won't do it on its own. Evelyn wraps both hands around her mug. The warmth feels like instruction. Ryan moves around the kitchen with a precision that worries her effort can be a form of panic. He slides a plate of toast her way. She doesn't know if she likes toast. She takes a piece anyway and eats as if learning a verb. After breakfast, Margaret kisses the top of Evelyn's head the way a blessing would, a touch that says alive more than owned. I'm visiting your grandfather later. Ryan, I will be insufferably diplomatic. While I'm gone, no battles, only small negotiations. If in doubt, fold towels. Folding towels saves more marriages than therapy ever will. Ryan's smile is obedient and helpless at once. Yes, ma'am. When the door closes behind her, the apartment becomes larger and quieter in the same breath. The silence between two people who once knew how to fill it is a corridor they aren't sure how to walk. I'm going to shower, Evelyn says. Okay. He takes their plates to the sink, already rolling up his sleeves again as if redemption might be water-soluble. Steam colonizes the bathroom mirror. Water drums the tile in a rhythm the body remembers even when the mind doesn't. She stands under the stream until the skin on her shoulders insists on attention. The world outside the shower is a fog-turned room. She reaches for a towel and realizes she forgot to bring her robe, a small domestic code violated by a new citizen. She wraps herself in terry cloth and steps into the bedroom, an island of white sheets in an ocean of walnut and glass. The door opens at the same time Ryan, halfway into a clean shirt, buttons miscounted. They stop. The air doubles in weight. He starts, then breaks. I thought you were still sorry. He turns his face away with an old-fashioned courtesy that feels strangely intimate. She tightens the towel even though it's already tight. You could knock. I did, he says softly. You didn't answer. I should have waited. They occupy the threshold, or at the edge of the bed, him at the edge of leaving. The moment is ridiculous in the way only sincerity can be. The smallness of it becomes a magnifying glass for everything else. Is this how we were? She asks. Because she cannot ask who were we without falling through the floor. Sometimes, he says, and sometimes we were worse, and sometimes we were better. She feels something hot and useless rise in her throat. Maybe this is why I wanted out. He nods, accepting a blow he expected. Maybe, but wanting out and walking out are different sports. One is a fantasy. The other is a map. She crosses to the nightstand and opens the top drawer. The papers are right where she put them last night, white, sharp, without perfume. She lays them on the bed like a thin, honest knife. This is the map. He looks down at the pages as if they might teach him a language he refused to learn. Give me 1 month, he says. No litigation, no theater. We do dinners at 7, and I show up like a person. If, after 30 days, you still want to mail that, he nods at the envelope I'll sign, quickly, quietly. Why 1 month? Her voice is not mocking, it is clinical, because that's a sentence small enough for the future not to feel threatened. Because I believe in deadlines, apparently more than in grace, because my mother does, and because I can do almost anything for 30 days except keep pretending we don't matter. She studies him as a stranger studies a painting, trying to decide whether the brushstrokes are proof of care or a distraction from emptiness. And what do I get out of this besides your improved posture? His mouth twitches. Money, independence, no strings attached. He pulls out his phone. I'll transfer what I owe the part of you I didn't protect. You're buying time, she says. Renting hope, he corrects, without flinching. There is a path she can feel beneath her feet, even if she can't see it. The woman she used to be might have demanded more. The woman she is now wants less, but wants it true. In front of your mother, she says, I'll be the wife she believes in. But in private, I'm your roommate with a better grasp of silence. We practice civility. We don't practice intimacy. His shoulders lower a fraction. Relief mixed with something almost like grief. Deal. She extends a hand. He takes it. The shake lasts an inch too long to be business. It isn't love. It's a treaty signed in skin. He clears his throat. I'll, get dressed. Please do, she says, and it almost sounds like humor. When he's gone, She dresses quickly jeans, the cream sweater that smelled like rain yesterday. She applies a light line of eyeliner with the concentration of a surgeon, not for vanity, but for control. In the mirror, her face looks like a document recently notarized. The living room receives him with morning radio and the low-level industry of a house trying to impress. Margaret's list waits on the counter. Arugula, lemons, of course, bread from Blue Willow, flowers that look like they healed from something. At the bottom, a line in Margaret's handwriting, "Be kind. If that fails, be quiet. If that fails, take a walk and try again." Evelyn opens her laptop. The blue light is an ocean. She is an ungainly swimmer, relearning the stroke. Job listings bloom and blur. Non-profit program director, gallery assistant, copywriter, communications lead foundation experience preferred. She scrolls past anything that echoes Ryan's world. "You don't have to do this today," he says from the doorway. "Tie loose but chosen." Or this week. "I know," she answers, but resting feels too much like waiting, and waiting feels like asking the past to come home and behave. He nods, chastened by her clarity. "There's a place at the foundation if you want it, flexible." Familiar faces, your faces, she says, not unkindly. "I need to make sure I can put on my own face without borrowing yours." Her phone new, unburdened by old texts, vibrates. The name on the screen gives her an odd sense of déjà vu, without content. Mason Hayes, "Heard you're back, coffee. I have a thing at Hayes and Nin that might fit a version of you I've met. 10 Power tomorrow, no pressure. Also, happy Tuesday for what it's worth." The message is simple, almost mathematical. She types before she can consult her fear. "Tomorrow, 10 works?" Hayes Ryan asks, trying to make his tone a hallway instead of a wall. "Yes, he's fine," Ryan says, which is code for "he's not mine. Be careful. Careful is what turned me into a museum." She says, "I want to be a field again." A tiny quiet follows a weather change only two people who have once vowed can feel. At 6:42 p.m., an email dings on Ryan's laptop. The entire room pretends not to notice. At 6:48, his phone hums twice, then quits, rebuked by his disobedience. At 6:55, Margaret comes home laden with flowers and victory. She lays a bouquet of ranunculus on the table like a thesis about softness. "Look at us," she sings. "We are a civilization." She plates dinner a stew the color of forgiveness, a salad of greens, and a confetti of pomegranate seeds that look like yeses. Candles arrive, the playlist named Domestic Peace. Volume 1 stretches a piano across the air and tucks it around them. At 7, Margaret says, sitting. The day stops being a test and becomes a table. They eat. Evelyn watches Ryan not answer his phone. He watches her reach for more salad like a person allowed to prefer things. Their sentences stumble, then organize themselves. They talk about trivialities as if language were a muscle they are rehabilitating. Margaret tells a story about a grocery cashier who sang to the oranges. He called them by name. She says, delighted. Imagine the strength of a world where produce gets serenaded. Halfway through, the door buzzer startles them. Ryan stiffens. Margaret puts a hand on his wrist. No, he breathes. Lets the outside be outside. The buzzer eventually does what all impatience must it gives up. Rule 1, Margaret says, and raises her water glass. 7 o'clock belongs to the people at this table. To the people at this table, Ryan repeats. And for a heartbeat, the toast sounds like a vow. Evelyn considers the stew. It is not extraordinary. It is better. It is generous. She realizes she's hungry in a way that isn't about food. After dinner, Margaret brandishes the grocery list again with the comic solemnity of a judge issuing community service. We need scones from Blue Willow and the nice brown bread. Together, she adds, cars need conversation. Ryan fetches his coat so quickly it's almost apology. Evelyn hesitates, then follows. The elevator is a small, well-lit confessional. They stand side by side, watching numbers descend. Thank you for not answering, she says finally. I wanted to. He confesses. I know, she says. And somehow it's not a scolding, it's a note in the margin. This is where the work is. Blue Willow smells like buttered memory and warm intentions. The bell above the door tings with the particular pitch of a place that has held more first dates than it will admit. Behind the counter, a barista with a constellation of piercings grins at them. Evening, we're low on scones, but I saved 2 for a couple who always fights over them. We don't. Ryan starts. We do. Evelyn interrupts, surprising herself. We fight over scones. Apparently, they share a quick smile, the first that doesn't feel like a rented prop. She studies the case. The scones are flecked with sugar like frost. The bread in neat, confident loaves. A row of lemon tarts that look like her personality arranged as dessert. The counter hums. The universe keeps on with its small rescues. They take their order to a corner table. The cafe is nearly empty. A woman in scrubs stares at her phone with the look of someone who has surrendered her heart to strangers all day and is now trying to find the way back. The espresso machine hisses like a friendly snake. "Do you remember this place?" Ryan asks. "No," she says, "but it recognizes me. That's almost better." He tears the scone, offers her the bigger half without performing the generosity. She takes it and pretends not to notice his ease. Crumbs become evidence of a life lived at regular speed. "Tomorrow I'm meeting Hayes," she says, watching his face when she says Hayes. He nods. "If you want me to read any contracts, I'll bring them to Monica," she says. She reads risk without falling in love with it. He accepts the boundary. "You're right, outside the window." Dusk organizes itself into a map of lamps. Inside, the light finds the line of his jaw human, not heroic. She realizes she is cataloging him the way she might catalog a room she's about to leave, not to own it, but to understand it. His phone buzzes on the table, face down. They both stare at it. He flips it over. Tessa Gray. The name is simple, the meaning not. He declines. The screen goes black with a soft, judgmental click. He looks up, throat working. "It's work," he says. "It's also not." The truth lands between them like a chair pulled out for a conversation no one wants and everyone needs. "You can answer," she says, and is surprised to find she means it. "I don't want to," he says, and is surprised to hear himself be that simple. They sit in the quiet that follows, like people finally telling the truth, not just to each other, but to themselves. The barista wipes down a counter with the carefulness of someone polishing the day for its next owner. Somewhere in the back, dishes speak in porcelain vowels. "Who was I?" she asks. Not sure if the question is permitted in public, not on paper, not in headlines. Here, she gestures to the cup, the case, the cafe's square footage of mercy. In places like this, he laces his fingers together, unlaces them. "You were the person who asked for butter on the side because you liked deciding how much sweetness the day deserved." She considers this detail like a small fossil, insignificant, until it isn't. "That sounds like someone I'd like." "You were also the person who pointed out when I lied to myself," he adds, politely, then not so politely. She takes a breath that feels like entering water. "And you, ambitious," he says, without pride, "impatient with what I called inefficiency and what you called people." The admission sits on the table with their half-eaten scones and the receipt that says they paid for what they consumed. She nods, as if he's returned an overdue book to the library of honesty. On the way out, the barista calls. "Take care of each other," they both say. "We're trying," in imperfect chorus. The walk back is November cool and conspiratorial. Streetlights draw halos. No one has to earn. They carry a paper bag that smells like breakfast tomorrow. The night casts them in the sort of lighting that forgives angles. A woman waves at a cab. A child in a red coat tells his father a story with his whole body. The world volunteers metaphors. They accept only the ones that don't draw blood. I don't want to fight about her, Evelyn says finally, surprising herself with the directness. Or about anyone. Okay, he says. I will make it easy not to. Can you? She's not taunting him. She's calling the future into evidence. He thinks before answering. I can try. Trying used to look like arguing you into my point. This time I'll try by being transparent enough you don't have to guess. Transparency can be theater, she says. I know, he answers. I'll do the kind you can trip me with. She almost laughs. Not at him, but at the honesty's sudden competence. Back home, they place the bread in the wooden box Margaret loves. The kitchen all lit edges, and practical beauty receives them like a stage with most of the audience gone home. They wash the 2 coffee cups they didn't need to wash. The dishwasher could have done it. But work creates a choreography. Meet me at the closet, she asks. I want to see what the past thinks I should wear. He blinks, then nods. Yes. Let me change first. The tie is starting to think it's in charge. They sit cross-legged on the bedroom floor in a democracy of sweaters, dresses, a shoe that looks like it belongs to a woman who runs toward joy without checking her calendar. She touches fabrics and looks for reaction in her bones. A blue dress, nothing, a black blouse, a faint yes, a pair of boots, a story, but not hers. This one she holds up a dress, the color of early evening. First time you wore that, he says. You said you wanted to look like a promise made to yourself. What a show-off, she says of her former self, and smiles. He laughs, sitting back on his hands, memory turning the corners of his mouth up without asking. She arranges 3 outfits on the bed for tomorrow's meeting. Mason's name moves through her head like a test she intends to pass without cheating. Ryan helps more hanger than opinion. His phone vibrates on the dresser. He doesn't move. A text banner crawls briefly into the room. Tessa Gray. We need to talk about the contract adjustment. The words are the opposite of a lullaby. He picks up the phone, walks to the living room, and returns a minute later. I told her we'll talk tomorrow, after 7. She gives him a look that says, noted, not yet applauded. They put the clothes back or forward. Closet doors sigh closed. A gentle punctuation when they come out. Margaret has already converted the table back into evening neutrality. She looks at the bread bag as if it's a newborn. You remembered the seated, she says. Proud. Excellent. Seated people make better choices. Ryan kisses his mother's cheek in passing. "We're working on it. I can tell," she says, scanning the room like a conductor listening for timbre. Tonight was almost music. Later, dishes find the dishwasher. Margaret disappears into her novel with the satisfaction of a woman whose plans are becoming events. The lights dim in increments, gentle enough to be believed. Outside their bedroom, Ryan hesitates. "You can have the bed," he says. "I'll take the couch." "You don't have to pretend heroism," she replies. "Sometimes the couch is just a couch. Sometimes it's confession," he says, half smile. "Either way, I'll take it." At the doorway, he pauses, as if language has one last petition. "Thank you for the scone," he says. "Thank you for the not answering," she counters. He nods like a student receiving a passing grade he intends to earn retroactively. "Good night, Evelyn." "Good night, Ryan." He goes. The room listens to his footsteps fade and then settle into the couch's familiar complaint. She turns off the lamp and turns it on again. Off, on. The light behaves. The heart learns slowly. She lies down. The ceiling remembers her silhouette more quickly this time. The pillow's small heat feels less like a question and more like a quiet hand on her shoulder. In the next room, a man practices sleeping without defense. The city wakes damp and unhurried, a watercolor blurred by rain. Evelyn stands at the window for a full minute before she remembers that standing doesn't count as progress. She dresses with an economy that feels almost athletic navy blouse, cream trousers, small gold studs she discovers in a dish shaped like a leaf. The studs surprise her tough little sons pretending to be polite. On the kitchen island, a note in Ryan's handwriting. Architect letters softened by hurry bread and fruit on the table. Meeting runs long, but I'll be home for dinner. R. No hearts, no apologies. The syntax of effort. Margaret appears in slippers and strategy, a steaming mug of mint. "You're luminous," she says, as if complimenting posture more than looks. "Go be new somewhere that deserves you." Evelyn pockets the note. "I'll try." "Don't try," Margaret says. "Practice. Try is for experiments. Practice is for people who intend to keep showing up." Hayes and Nin is a ribbon of glass between two brick buildings that remember Prohibition more personally than they should. The lobby smells like rain knocked off umbrellas, coffee, and a faint afterthought of citrus. A receptionist with orange nail polish waves her through with the unbothered warmth of someone who trusts calendars. Mason meets her at the elevator. He looks precisely like a man who runs a creative agency to bankroll the gentler project of being decent sleeves rolled. A watch that says he respects time but doesn't worship it. The kind of smile that doesn't flash arrives. Evelyn Hart, he says, taking 2 steps back as if to see her properly. I'd forgotten how you make hallways look like a plan. I make coffee look like a plan. She answers, because his attention feels like a garment she hasn't tried on yet. He laughs and guides her through the office. Open floor, plants that are alive on purpose, a wall of framed campaigns mostly warm, none smug. A copywriter looks up and mouths. A designer waves with a stylus. Okay. Mason says when they reach a small glass room with an oval table. Here's the honest version I want you. The you that writes oxygen. We're about to pitch a wellness line that thinks women are exhausted by being marketed to like they're either broken or perfect. They want the middle truth that breathes. He slides a folder across. The logo is small, the brief large. Evelyn reads while her breath does that thing. It does when words ask it to matter again. They don't want slogans, she says. They want sentences that don't lie. He confirms. Can you do that? I don't know. She answers, and the not knowing tastes clean. But I can find out. Good. You'll build with Monica, he adds. And Evelyn's mouth curves before she can edit it. She told me to tell you this is a no swim or drown situation. He goes on, we will pace, and we will not turn your life into a brand. Evelyn closes the folder. I'll do a mood pass today. Language sketches. Fine, but only until 3, he says. Then you go home and let your brain turn the corner without you. She looks at him at the way he offers structure without leash, and something in her chest recognizes respect like a flavor. One more thing, she says. Don't protect me from work. Just protect me from noise. Deal, Mason says. Noise is where ideas go to feel important. He leaves her in the glass room with a legal pad and a pencil she sharpens down to honesty. She writes in short lines at first, like test breaths, not a fix, a habit, not glow, sleep, not conquer, soften. Her hand remembers the cadence before her mind does. She writes louder. Maybe wellness isn't a promise. Maybe it's a chair that survives the day. She underlines nothing. She refuses to rush a yes. By noon. Monica slides into the room with 2 takeout salads and a look that blends friend and producer like coffee and cream. You're better than a Monday, Monica says. We'll put that on your billboard. Evelyn grins. Too expensive. Then we'll put it on a Post-it and stick it to your laptop, Monica says, dropping the food. How are the words arriving? Evelyn says. Good. Let them knock, Monica replies. If they kick the door, write them down and we'll apologize later. They eat standing, looking out at the rain like two women who have long ago decided weather won't be in charge. When Evelyn tries to pay, Monica blocks her with a fork. My birthday week, she says, I'm allowed to feed people. What do you want for your birthday? Evelyn asks. To live in a world where the good men keep showing up for the second act? Monica says without missing a bite. Then she points her fork at the folder, also maybe headlines. Ambitious. Evelyn says. I contain multitudes, Monica says, and leaves in a swish of competence. By 3, Evelyn has 6 pages half-sentences, bones of lines, things that might survive into something other people can use. She leaves them with Mason, who reads for a full minute before nodding. We can breathe here, he says, tapping the paper. Good work. Now go home and do something slow. Dinner at 7, she says. Religious, he says. St. Margaret keeps the liturgy. The rain is a patient drummer when she steps back onto the street. She walks instead of hailing a car. The umbrella keeps her dry and honest. On the corner, a florist covers buckets of freesia with clear plastic. The blooms fogging a little as if remembering a warmer house. A dog shakes off water and becomes joy that won't apologize. Evelyn wants to be that direct. She arrives at the apartment with cheeks bright and hair defiant. The lamp over the kitchen table is already on. Margaret believes light should welcome, not interrogate. How is honest work? Margaret asks, ladling soup into bowls as if measuring kindness. Hard like a good stretch. Evelyn says, not hard like a bruise. Margaret smiles, satisfied. Excellent. That level of hard is where people meet themselves. Monica fed me, Evelyn adds, and Mason did not patronize me. Keep both. Margaret decrees. Feeders and non-patronizers are the scaffolding of a life worth keeping. Ryan comes in at 6:53, rain stippling his sleeves. He stops at the threshold of the kitchen, like a man arriving in the third act of a play he refuses to miss. Hi, he says to the room, but he means it at Evelyn. You're early, Margaret says, her tone sending an undeniable gold star. I left a meeting, he says, almost proud, almost ashamed. They can learn to talk without me. Margaret's eyebrows approve, and dinner becomes the sound of cutlery and people who are trying. Ryan asks exactly 2 questions about Evelyn's day, then listens to the answers like he paid for them. She asks one about his, and he mentions something about cost centers and then stops, as if the vocabulary of power has to learn how to be a guest. After dessert, poached pears, modest and confident, Margaret leans back and assesses the table like a general pleased with the spoils of ordinary victory. Tomorrow, she says, Blue Willow got their lemon tarts back. Couples need errands. where not Ryan starts. We are whatever makes the walk to Blue Willow happen, Margaret says. Ending the topic with a smile, she excuses herself to call Hugh. The moment she leaves, the room changes size. Ryan stands to clear. Evelyn stands at the same time, and for a second they perform a small dance of overlapping hands and almost touches when his fingers graze hers over a plate. They both pretend the electricity is static, not history. You don't have to, he says, taking the plate anyway. I know, she says. I want to be useful. You are, he says too quickly, then swallows the overreach. I mean, thank you. They wash in tandem. The dishwasher hums like a machine committed to peace at the sink. The window gathers the city's lights into a polite constellation. Ryan's sleeves are pushed up, and there is something shamelessly attractive about a man holding a dish towel as if holding a chance. I told Tessa I'd talk tomorrow afternoon, he says, surprising them both with the name after 7. Not before. Evelyn recognizes what that costs. Okay, I'll copy counsel. He adds, no, gray zones. Okay, she says again, because making a ceremony out of an adult decision is how you kill it. They finish. 7 o'clock releases them back into the house. The next evening, the walk to Blue Willow is a soft theater. The rain has loosened its grip and now barely kisses the street. The cafe bell pings when they enter, familiar enough to be affectionate, not yet intimate. The barista with the piercings grins. Back for your civic duty. Civic duty, Evelyn asks. Couples who buy bread, the barista says. You keep the world from falling apart. Ryan orders without glancing at Evelyn. Her usual, no caramel. The accuracy lands like a symptom. Evelyn raises an eyebrow. You remember my coffee. You hated being sweetened against your will, he says. She sips and finds, to her annoyance, that he is right. Good memory, she says, flat to mask the warmth. They take the corner table again, outside. A kid in a dinosaur raincoat stomps with the seriousness of a soldier. His father lets him. Inside, plates clink soft vowels. For a while, they manage the kind of talking that people in waiting rooms do, pleasant, careful, with enough extra room for emergency. Ryan's phone buzzes against the wood, its face down, but phones have a way of announcing identity through tone. He flips it over. Tessa. The name is a 4-letter study in posture. You can answer, Evelyn says, the calmness costing her. I don't want to, he says, unexpected and clean. He watches the screen go dark again. Off to their right, a woman in scrubs laughs so hard she covers her mouth. the day exiting her like steam. I know I don't deserve your trust, Ryan says, not looking at Evelyn, so she can look at him without him looking back. I'm not asking for it. I'm asking for a chance to learn to deserve it while you're still here. Evelyn lets the sentence land, considers its furniture. You can't learn from me, she says. You have to learn because otherwise you won't like the person you raised yourself to be. He nods. A quick admission. Yes, and I need to learn who I am without the gravity of what we were. Another nod. Then he makes a face like a boy not wanting to admit a skinned knee hurts. When you say we were, does that mean we aren't? It means I'm not prepared to know yet, she says, and I will not be hurried by memory or remorse. The barista sets down a lemon tart with 2 forks without asking. On the house, she says, you radiate necessary reparations. Evelyn laughs despite herself. We do, she asks. Everyone radiates something, the barista says, and wanders away. Ryan pushes 1 fork toward Evelyn. We used to fight over this, he says. I don't remember that, she answers, cutting a neat triangle. You always pretended you didn't want dessert, he says, and then ate half of mine. Economy, she says. Honesty, he says back. The fork to mouth is a truce older than language. They leave with bread in a paper bag that warms her palm through the bag. On the way home, the city looks like it's on its best behavior, Evelyn says. I told Mason yes. To the project. Ryan breathes out, then in. Good. He's not a villain. That's a low bar, she says. He clears the high ones. 2, Ryan says. To his own surprise, he told me once that he didn't believe in stealing clients. He believed in being the person a client wanted to steal themselves for. That's either manipulative or poetic, she says. Sometimes both. He answers, sometimes neither. They walk a block without speaking. She wants to tell him that Mason makes the room feel like it belongs to the work, not the men. She doesn't. Some gratitudes are private until they ripen. Saturday, Monica's birthday. The party is at a wine bar with walls the color of old postcards, a piano in the corner, light that forgives almost everything. Evelyn arrives on time with a plant wrapped in brown paper and a ribbon Monica will keep for something else. Monica meets her at the door with lip color named after confidence and a hug that has always been a country. I like this you, Monica says in her ear, sharp, calm, expensive. I'm rented. Evelyn says, lease terms pending, breakable with cause. Monica replies, then pulls her in. Mason's here. Don't be weird. Define weird, Evelyn says. But Monica is already in hostess orbit, greeting a couple from the agency, steering two freelancers toward better seats, performing the genius of making people feel chosen. Mason comes to Evelyn with a glass of something that smells like pear and good decisions. "Today, one done," he says. "To not turning my life into content," she counters. "Consider it a house rule," he says, touching his glass to hers. He's careful with proximity, respectful of the way her body has become a courtroom. He asks about her morning. She admits to buying tulips and a book of poems she doesn't fully understand yet. He lights up, confusion with faith. He says, "That's the correct ratio for poems." They talk about the campaign 2 or 3 lines that could anchor a film. He floats a thought about hands, women's hands, doing ordinary work, beautifully tying a child's shoe, untying their own. "We never show the hands that keep the world stitched," he says, "and when we do, we sell them dish soap." She answers, "Let's not," he says, a promise. When Ryan arrives, he sees her first, how she stands with one hip resting against the bar, her posture ease without surrender. The sight knocks something off a shelf inside him. He crosses the room slower than he wants to, faster than is graceful. "Evening," he tells the group, but his eyes anchor to her. He is clean-shaven in a way that looks like he lost a thought halfway through. His tie is uncharacteristically loose. He looks like a man who left a meeting because something more important suddenly weighed more. Mason's smile is easy. "Blake," he says, shaking Ryan's hand. "We were just celebrating the return of your most dangerous asset." "Mason," Ryan says, too neutral. "Congratulations on hiring above your station." Hiring, Evelyn says. "Light," he said, inviting. Mason laughs. "Fair." Monica appears with 2 small cakes on a board like twin planets. "I will now open the floor for toasts," she announces, but only the kind that do not depress anyone. A designer lifts a glass and says something sweet about Monica's capacity to make deadlines feel like dates. A junior strategist thanks her for telling him to wear better shoes. Then Mason, raising his glass with a small sincerity that does not audition, to second chances of the work, of the heart, of the version of ourselves that shows up without a costume. It's a good sentence. It lands. People, the way people, at truth disguised as brevity. Mason turns to Evelyn and taps his glass to hers, and to the courage to start at page 3. He adds, quiet enough that only she hears. Her throat tightens without her consent. To page 3, she says, Ryan's jaw does that thing jaws do when they wish they were softer. He smiles like a man translating a language late and poorly. He moves to stand beside Evelyn, Not too close. Close enough. Photo time, Monica declares, shooing people into small clusters. She puts Ryan and Evelyn together because she's been alive long enough to risk being rude in service of a better picture. Mason steps aside easily, politely, illness-free. The photographer in the corner, because there is always a photographer in corners, raises a camera. Ryan leans slightly toward Evelyn, and she doesn't lean away. The shutter clicks. It feels like an agreement and a lie. After the photos, people drift toward the terrace where the air is cooler and the city practices being romantic. Evelyn goes for air. The room had become the wrong size. Mason finds her by the railing. Keep space. You okay? I don't know yet, she says. And he takes the answer as the gift it is. You can go, he says softly. No one needs you to perform being okay. She turns to him. Thank you for treating me like a person, not a headline. Headlines are the things we read to avoid the book, he says, then catches himself. Sorry, I'm full of aphorisms after one drink. They suit you, she says, surprised to find she means it. Princess. You terrify men who think tenderness is a hobby, Mason says, the princess landing as a joke with a question mark. I admire the sport. The word floats, delicate and foolish, before either of them can fix it. Ryan is suddenly there, the rain from the opening door making his hair an argument. His voice drops a register. That's my wife. Conversation goes thin, air gets shy. Mason lifts both hands in a what the hell gesture that is more peacemaking than surrender. No disrespect. He says, my bad attempt at branding. Ryan says, too even. Ryan, Evelyn warns, not loud, more scalpel than shout. He looks at her wrist, at the place where a vein shows when her hand tenses. It's tense now. He unclenches his jaw as if it weighs more than he'll admit. We should go, he says. I'm not a package. She replies, no. He says, you're a person. I'm trying to remember how to behave around those. The room behind them goes noisy in the way rooms do when they're pretending not to listen. Monica materializes between two breaths, body-blocking humor. I will now cut the cake, she declares to no one in particular, hustling a crowd like a sheepdog in lipstick. Evelyn puts her glass down with surgical care. I'm stepping out, she says to no one and everyone. She walks. Ryan follows because he hasn't relearned how not to. The old skill was possession. The new is loyalty. And he hasn't built the muscle yet to distinguish them. Outside. The rain has returned in a finer script. The awning is a brief shelter. a theology of fabric. Neon scrawls itself across puddles in patient cursive. Cars smear color down the street. Somewhere a siren decides it's needed. "You embarrassed me," she says, arms crossed more for heat than for anger. "I tried to stop something I couldn't name," he says, breath white in the air. "I hate the way he looks at you like he invented gentleness. And I hate the way you look at me like you invented me." She fires back. "I am not a patent. A beat. Two." The rain writes them into a quieter font. "I am trying," he says, voice cracking not with volume, but with exposure. "I am trying to unlearn the man who thought he could keep you by standing between you and every exit. And I am trying to learn the woman who doesn't mistake being held for being cornered." She says, "But you cannot help me by announcing ownership to a room full of people." "It wasn't ownership," he says, but even his denial is ashamed. "It was terror, which is not an excuse." She says, softer. "No." He agrees, throat working. It's an origin. They stand there breathing, two living barometers. The city exhales on their behalf. A bus sighs to a stop. A woman steps off, pulls her hood tight, heads home to someone who either will or won't ask how her day was. "I don't remember the exact moment I stopped being safe with you," Evelyn says, "but my body does. Tonight it ran the numbers again." He nods, a slow acceptance. "Tell me how to fix it," he says, then flinches at what he's asked. No wrong verb. "Tell me what to do differently so that fixing isn't required." "Don't perform me," she says. "Don't stake flags. Don't narrate my identity to me or for me. Ask me questions that don't lead the witness." He closes his eyes like a man filing instructions under life-saving. "Okay." And when jealousy arrives, she continues, "Admit it without making me hold it for you." "Okay," he says again, a beat, and then an unreasonable honesty arrives, as uninvited as rain. "Eve," he says, "I am jealous because I saw you laugh with him the way you used to laugh with me, like your shoulders trusted the room. I wanted to be the room again." She leans back against the brick. The cold is bracing, almost kind. "Be the person again," she says. "The room is a byproduct." He nods, chastened and oddly lit from within. Their breath rises between them like two small ghosts exchanging notes. He reaches out without thinking and tucks a strand of her wet hair behind her ear. A tenderness so practiced it arrives without memory. His hand lingers, asks permission by staying. She could step away. She doesn't. The rain softens. The neon warms. And suddenly, he is nearer than explanation. "Don't," she whispers. With none of the steel she intended, we shouldn't. I know, he says, and kisses her anyway. It is not cinematic. It is human. It is a franchise of old mistakes, briefly under new management. Her mouth opens to him like a house that remembers where the cups are. His hands find the edges of her coat and the knowledge of her spine. The kiss is not a promise. It is a data point with a pulse. She pulls back first. Breath messy. Eye makeup miraculously surviving. What are we doing? She asks, which is to say, what am I about to regret, remembering the part that wasn't broken? He says, physical memory is not consent to a future, she says, trying for stern and landing on wall. I know, he says again, and this time it sounds like a man discovering the uses of a sentence he used to waste. Take me home, she says, because the longer she stands under this awning, the smaller the choices get. The drive is a quiet tunnel. Windshield wipers keep time. Streetlights keep the kind of promises lights can keep. In the elevator, they face forward like polite strangers. On the 12th floor, the hallway smells like orange oil, and the end of a story they are refusing to tell. The apartment is dim. Margaret's door is closed. The thin stripe of light at the bottom, a parental compromise. Ryan lets them in. They stand in the dark living room, each waiting for the other to remember who goes first. I'm sorry, he says into the shadow, for what she asks, because specificity is the price of adult forgiveness, for shrinking you to a moment, he says, for not letting you finish your laugh, for wanting to be seen as the man who changed, rather than being the man who changes. Silence accepts the accuracy. I'm sorry, she answers, for letting the kiss happen when I know I'm not ready for what comes after. What comes after, he asks. Small. Responsibility, she says. A beat. The city sighs outside their windows. Do you want me to sleep on the couch? He asks. Though he already knows the answer. I want you to choose it without asking, she says. He nods. Okay. He moves toward the couch. Stops. Your hair, he says, helplessly, smiling at the stray curl refusing order. It's wilder when it rains. Everything is, she says, and the sentence isn't about hair. He gets a blanket from the hall closet and the good pillow because the timeline where he punishes himself theatrically is gone. He hopes, replacing performance with practice. He lies down. The couch receives him with the twang of a story it's heard before. Evelyn goes to the bedroom. She changes slowly. The zipper a sound that has always known where it was going. She sits on the edge of the bed and stares at her hands in her lap. Palms up like two open parentheses, waiting for what belongs between. From the living room, his breathing steady against upholstery. She turns out the lamp and lies back. The pillow is warmer than she expects. Or perhaps she is. Rain thins to memory. She closes her eyes and sees the awning again. The kiss. The moment her body mistook gravity for grace. Sleep comes, suspicious but curious. In the other room, Ryan watches the ceiling and catalogues the shape of his wanting less as possession, more as patience. He texts no one, he drafts no statement, he recites no vows. He makes a list on his phone. He never types beyond time. Answer clean, let her laugh, make 7 o'clock a place that keeps happening. He breathes to 4, out to 6, and when sleep edges him, he lets it. Morning will bring proof and prices. The city will clean its shoulders and pretend it wasn't crying. Blue Willow will put out the lemon tarts. Mason will email 2 questions precisely phrased. Tessa will wait, or she won't. Monica will have photos that make everyone look more certain than they felt. Margaret will say, "Good. Keep going." But tonight ends not with an oath, not with a voice explaining what it all means, not with a moral. It ends with a door closed gently, a couch learning a man's outline again, and a woman practicing the uncomplicated art of not lying to herself about what she can hold. Morning finds the apartment in polite repair, as if the night arranged the furniture back into acceptable positions after everyone went to bed. The rain has rinsed the city clean enough to pass inspection. Evelyn wakes to the small click and exhale of the coffee machine, the scent edging under the bedroom door like a careful proposal. Her first thought is of the awning, then of the kiss, then of the fact that memory is an unreliable witness whenever longing is allowed to testify. She lies still and takes inventory, heartbeat steady, jaw not clenched, a new, unfamiliar tenderness in her shoulders, as if some tense animal has decided to nap. She turns her head on the pillow and notices the glass of water Ryan set there last night. A lemon slice floats at the top in absurd, kind detail. She sits up. The clock reads 7:12. On the chair hangs the navy blouse she wore to the party, hung neatly, rain dark at the hem. There's a faint smear of his cologne on the collar. Not a mark, just a ghost. She presses a thumb there, then lets her hand drop because she is not a museum guard. When she opens the bedroom door, the living room is empty except for the couch, molded in the outline of a man who didn't sleep enough to change it. In the kitchen, Ryan stands at the stove in a t-shirt and running shorts, hair damp, wrists bare. He's making omelets like he's reading sheet music. The French press is already steeped. 2 plates wait like benign expectations. He looks up. relief and apology arriving at the same time on his face. Morning, her mouth, unreliable as ever, says, "You ran." He glances at the shoes by the door, laces flung exactly where momentum abandoned them. Couldn't sit still. Figured if I'm going to ask the day for anything, I should meet it in person first. She crosses to the counter and takes the mug he nudges toward her. The E in gold has never looked more like a variable. "You cooked." "I watched 3 videos." He says, embarrassed. The man said butter is a boundary. Between what and what? Between sticking and staying. He slides an omelet onto a plate and winces at the shape. I might have negotiated poorly. She laughs, and it is a gentler sound than last night's arguments. He sets the plate in front of her, slides a fork where a fork ought to go, then sets his own plate and sits. Their knees almost touch under the counter. Neither moves away. They eat like citizens, not saints. "What do you remember?" he asks after a while, not pushing, as if the question had to pay a toll to be allowed in. "Rain," she says, my shoes squeaking, the way the awning made everything feel like theater, and your fear, how it sounded when you said my name." He nods. "I'm sorry," he says, "for that fear and for staking flags in places that aren't mine." "You didn't," she says, surprising both of them. "You grabbed my wrist. You shouldn't have. But then you let go. That's 2 acts, not 1. He breathes out. "Thank you for counting honestly." She nods at his running shoes. "Why now, I don't know," he says, then revises. "Because I've spent years running toward things that approved of me. I'd like to run toward something that doesn't need my approval." She sips the coffee and lets herself be moved without declaring it. Small, stubborn savings. Margaret appears, regal in pajamas, lipstick like a secret handshake. "We have survived another night," she announces, peering at their plates, "and we appear to have eaten. Miraculous. Ryan cooked." Evelyn says, "I can tell." Margaret answers, tasting a bite and smiling. "Butter as boundary." "I read the same internet." Ryan tries to look offended and fails. Margaret kisses his temple with the economy of a woman who loves her son but refuses to subsidize self-pity. "I'm going to see Hugh later," she says, pouring tea. "He heard a rumor, because of course he did, that you are reevaluating the gray contracts. There will be thunder." Ryan swallows. "I'm meeting Tessa at 10, legal at 11, board at 3. Margaret raises an eyebrow. "And your heart, when does it get time on the calendar?" 7, he says, almost smiling. "Dinner, good boy," she says, patting his cheek once, then turning to Evelyn. "And you work," Evelyn says. Mason wants a second pass on language by noon. Monica's building a deck around it. "Excellent," Margaret says, pleased. The best antidote to yesterday is a purposeful today. They eat, clean, and disperse with the respectable haste of people pretending they have always been this competent. Hazen Nin looks different in the sunlight, less like ambition, more like function. Evelyn sits in the same glass room as yesterday, spreads her pages out like a patient over a sheet. The lines from Act 3 have grown edges overnight. She sands them without making them dull. Not a fix. A habit becomes not a fix, a practice. She writes a line about sleep that makes her grin, then cross it out because grinning isn't the only criterion. She calls Monica to ask whether the client can handle the word fail. Monica laughs. They'll pretend they can't, and then thank us later because everyone's tired of pretending success is an outfit. At 10, Ryan's day opens its mouth to bite. Tessa Gray arrives at Blake Industries in a suit the exact color of storm clouds right before they become news. She carries a leather portfolio and the energy of someone used to being ushered in. The receptionist explains gently that Mr. Blake is in a meeting. Tessa smiles in a way that says she has been on first-name terms with urgency for years, and it does her favors. He's expecting me. He is, in fact, expecting her. He also expects himself to behave like the man he promised under an awning. When she enters his office, he stands not as an apology, but as a bookend to a period they have not yet placed. "Tessa," he says. "Ryan," she says, and looks around like a woman who used to live here. The windows are still floor to ceiling. The view still arranges the city for men like him. The glass carafe is still half full of water. No one drinks. "You look different," she says, because that is easier than older or tired or honest. "Sit," he says, and sits. She crosses a leg elegantly and opens the portfolio. "We'll be brief. The contract adjustment is straightforward. The campaign delivered above benchmarks. We're entitled to the rollover." He nods. "You are. And we'll pay it." She blinks. "We," she repeats, as if he has announced a plurality she did not authorize. "Blake will honor all obligations," he says evenly, and then terminate the relationship with Gray Partners. Effective immediately, the portfolio becomes heavier in her lap. A book she didn't mean to carry. "Excuse me." "You heard me," he says quietly. "We'll pay the penalty clause. We'll make you whole on production. After that, we're done." Tessa's laugh is a clean blade. For what sin results? Or because you need a gesture to put on the dinner table at 7, he lets the hit land. Because my company doesn't do business in ways that confuse the personal with the profitable. Because it was wrong what we were doing to each other and to the people we hired to pretend it was about work. And because I won't ask my wife to live in a house with receipts under the rug. Tessa watches him as if he's a painting altering itself while she stares. This isn't about your wife, she says, because that's the only move left that allows her to keep her dignity. It is, he says, and it isn't. Mostly it's about me. I don't like the man I had to be to think this was efficient. She leans back. You don't survive this way, she says softly, not unkindly. Men like you do not survive by making the moral choice when no one asked you to. Then I'll learn to be a different man, he says, for a beat. She almost smiles some private recognition of a game ending on terms better than spectacle. Then she closes the portfolio, the leather sighing. You'll face a board, she warns. Hugh will make noise. My lawyers will make more. I know, he says, and stands. Legal will send the papers by noon. She stands. 2. Tell Evelyn, she says. And he flinches at the familiarity. Tell her I hope she gets the life you're trying to build. Not because I'm selfless, she adds, and her mouth twists in something like humor, but because I'd prefer to lose to a better story. He almost says thank you, but the sentence would insult the moment. She leaves. On the way out, she pauses at the receptionist's desk and says to the young woman with the neat bun, "Good luck." The receptionist smiles cautiously. The way people smile in buildings where the weather is set by a few rooms on the top floor. At 11, legal arrives like a flock of blackbirds that learned the choreography last night. The general counsel, a woman named Priya, who believes in contracts because she believes people are more honest on paper, sits with a pen and a face that doesn't do panic on weekdays. We can do this, she says. It will cost. How much, Ryan asks, because numbers are the way he talks to fear. She tells him. It is the kind of money that alters quarterly reports and boardroom tempers. It is also a number he can say out loud without choking. He says it out loud. He does not choke. The CFO screen shares, charts behaving like disappointed toddlers. We can absorb the penalty, she says, and still hit the year. A beat. We won't like it. Hit the year, Ryan says, and reallocate. No bone saw to staff. Cut vanity projects. Kill the expansion of the conference app. It was a stupid idea I liked because it looked clever on a slide. Noted, Priya says. Writing kill vanity in neat script without smirking. Bored at 3. You'll need Margaret. I always need Margaret, he says. At noon, As promised, the termination goes out, the wire follows, the paper world changes shape. At 12:07, a junior at Gray Partners texts a friend, who tells a cousin, who mentions it in a group chat with a journalist who owes them a favor. By 12:30, a tech blog that pretends to be about marketing, but is actually about weather vanes, posts an item written like a wry shrug. Blake cuts ties with Gray. Penances are trending. The post has 3 sources and no mercy. It gets the number wrong, but the mood right. At 1:15, Margaret reads it in the back of a car and says out loud, "Oh, Hugh is going to rehearse this in front of a mirror." She calls Ryan. He doesn't pick up. She texts, "Proud of you. Hydrate. I have your back and the good earrings." At 2:05, Evelyn's phone buzzes with a link from Monica. "Your man just set himself on fire in the right direction." Evelyn clicks, reads, feels 5 things in quick succession: alarm at the number, awe at the audacity, anger at the need for spectacle, relief at the clarity, and a smaller, private respect that sits down in her like a new chair. She texts nothing. She highlights a line in her draft. "We don't heal by pretending we were never hurt. We heal by becoming trustworthy to ourselves." At 3:00, the boardroom fills with men and 2 women, arranged like punctuation marks, periods, and commas, and the occasional semicolon who knows how to make clauses behave. Hugh Blake enters last, because older men know that entrance order is a weapon. He is elegant and offended by default. He takes his seat at the head as if the chair requested him. Ryan presents without slides. It is not a performance. It is a confession typed for business. He outlines the numbers. He recites the penalties like prayers. He explains the decision. We don't do work that confuses alignment with entanglement. We don't keep partners who require me to be the smallest version of myself. A director with shoes too shiny says, "Morality is an asset when it is cheap." This is not cheap. "No," Ryan says calmly, "it's not. But it's cheaper than rotting from the inside." Hugh taps his cane once on the floor. A theatrical punctuation. "You're a steward, not a savior," he says. "Leave salvation to priests." "I'm a husband," Ryan replies before his caution can catch up. "And a leader." Both require choosing what hurts now to prevent what kills later. "You'll kill the gray pipeline," another director warns. "Half our consumer campaigns touch their network. Then we build a different network," Ryan says. "One that doesn't require me to apologize to my dinner table." Hugh's anger finds its proper theater. He stands, cane steady, voice controlled. This is impudence disguised as reform. You were not raised to confuse romance with revenue. Ryan holds his grandfather's gaze without blinking. "I was raised to not confuse profit with permission. Silence discovers itself. Priya looks at the table, not to avoid choosing sides, but to keep from smiling. The CFO coughs into her hand because the human body must release pressure somehow. A director scribbles something that looks like a grocery list, but is likely called competitor. Hugh sits. "We will discuss governance," he says, smooth as surgery. "And you will remember that family has rules." Ryan nods. "I remember," he says. "I'm changing some." The meeting ends not with a vote, but with an agreement to reconvene. Men leave pretending to check messages. Women leave actually reading the room. Hugh lingers, then walks past his grandson without patting his shoulder, which is an affection he withholds strategically. At 4:10, Ryan is alone in his office with a headache that feels like an honest day. He texts Priya. "Thank you," she replies. "Do not thank me for doing my job. Bring me a lemon tart." He texts Margaret. "It's done," she replies with a photo of her earrings, which are indeed the good ones. He almost texts Evelyn. He does not. He shuts his laptop and goes home. At home, the apartment smells like garlic and thyme. Margaret has prepped ingredients with the cheerful severity of a woman who knows that chopping is therapy. She points at the counter. "You'll cook?" She tells Ryan, "I am a coach tonight." "Yes, chef," he says, and takes instruction onions slow. Deglaze like you mean it. Salt at the right time, not the loud time. He rolls up his sleeves, and the kitchen, so used to seeing him in suits opening takeout, seems to square its shoulders. Evelyn arrives at 6:24 with tulips again, as if the day asked her for witnesses. She places them in a jar, watches him at the stove. The sight releases a filament of heat from some quiet coil inside her. She places her bag on a chair. Smells like competence, or at least like intention, he says without turning. "Margaret's in the study trying to make your grandfather love democracy. Good luck to democracy," Evelyn says. He glances at her then, and the second is an echo from before anything broke. "You saw the thing," he says, meaning the article he didn't send. "I saw the thing," she answers. "I didn't leak it." He says, "I know." She says, "You don't do anonymous. It would mess with your posture." He files at that, small and grateful. He plates pasta, nothing showy, but the sort of dish that would approve of itself even if left alone. He sets the table because his mother taught him to, not because he has always remembered to. At 7, Margaret emerges and takes her seat like a dignitary who successfully ratified a treaty with reality. To small, good decisions that add up, she says, raising her water. To small, good decisions. They echo, almost in unison. They eat. The conversation is ordinary, which feels like the reward. Margaret asks Evelyn about the campaign words that would not behave. Evelyn tells a story about a line that looked brilliant until it tried too hard and died on the page. Ryan mentions quietly that he fired a project he once loved because he loved it for the way it made him sound smart. No one uses the word penalty. Only once does Tessa's name appear. When Margaret asks whether the termination papers are signed by both sides, Ryan says, "I'll meet her counsel tomorrow to execute the rest." And then Margaret asks, "And then we rebuild." He says, taking a breath he intends to own. We hire for values like we hire for skills. We stop rewarding volume without measuring cost. Write it down, Margaret says. Men need slogans too. After dinner, he clears. Evelyn reaches for plates. Their fingers touch. This time, neither pretends not to notice. The kitchen accepts them, absorbs the static, becomes a place. Margaret disappears with the ritual decency of a woman who knows when the stage belongs to other actors. Walk, Ryan asks, sudden, boyish. She hesitates, then nods. Once around the block, no detours that end under awnings. He grins. Deal, outside. The city gives them a gold hour it forgot to spend earlier. They walk without brushing hands. They pass a couple arguing kindly in French. A man strapping a Christmas tree to a bicycle. A girl drawing with chalk in her driveway an elaborate city of squares connected by improbable bridges. The drawing makes Evelyn's chest ache with something like nostalgia for things that never happened. What did Hugh say, she asks finally? That I don't know how the world works. Ryan says, he might be right. I'm not sure I want to know anymore. What do you want to know? She asks. How to be who I promised on paper, he says. The marriage papers, the company charter, my own lists. I want them to stop contradicting each other. She studies his profile, the part of a face that tells the truth when the front lies. That's a lot to want. It is. He agrees, which is why I'm eating one lemon tart at a time. She snorts. Did you bring me one? He brightens, suddenly sheepish. 2. Actually, Priya extorted me. There's a box on the counter. Your counsel is a genius, she says. She is. He agrees. She talks to me like a man who can hear. They walk another block in companionable, not speaking. A child's cough barks from a window and then quiets. A jazz saxophone worries a phrase and makes peace with it. They return home at the speed of people who aren't fleeing or chasing. In the elevator, he says, I'll sleep on the couch. She nods. Thank you. But I might steal the good pillow, he says. You will not, she replies. That is a line. They smile into the mirrored doors at their own reflections, the way they stand apart, but oriented toward the same corner of the small world they occupy. Back inside, Margaret has left 3 things on the table: chamomile tea in a pot, a small plate with 2 lemon tarts, and a handwritten note that reads, "Choose well, then sleep." She has also left, judging by the open window in her room and the faint scent of cold air. She likes to let the city in at night, so she remembers it's not hers. They eat the tarts like a sacrament with no doctrine. He washes the plates, no theater, and sets them to dry. She stands at the sink and watches his hands. The urge to say something dangerous rises and is replaced by a sentence safe enough to live with. "You did something difficult today," she says. "So did you." He answers, "You let me do it." "That's not nothing," she says. "It's everything," he says, then shakes his head. "No. Not everything. It's the part of everything that matters. Careful," she says lightly. "You're getting good at sentences." "I have an excellent editor," he says, nodding toward her. "And a terrifying mother. She's a national park." Evelyn says, "We should all pay entrance fees." He laughs, and the sound makes the kitchen warmer. He turns off lights until only the lamp over the stove glows like a nightlight for adults. He looks at the couch, then at the hallway to the bedroom, then at her. "Good night. Evelyn, good night. Ryan." He takes a blanket, this time without the martyrdom she'd hated in him before. He lies down, sets his phone on the floor, face down, and closes his eyes. She goes to the bedroom, washes her face, moisturizes with a thoroughness that feels like an investment rather than a performance, and slips into bed. Sleep doesn't come right away. Her mind plays the day back with a director's affection for Engel's Ryan in running shorts, Ryan with a pan, Ryan with a pen in the boardroom because she can see it even if she didn't, Ryan with a dish towel, words she wrote at the office crosstalk in her head with words he spoke today. We don't heal by pretending we were never hurt. I won't ask my wife to live in a house with receipts under the rug. She turns on her side and lets the 2 lines sit next to each other until they agree to stop performing. The apartment settles around them with the sober joy of a place that has survived people and intends to keep doing so. A car door thunks outside. Someone laughs too loud and then apologizes for happiness. The heater clanks, once proof that even machines dislike change. Evelyn wakes at 2 to the quiet sound of the refrigerator deciding to be alive, and the softer sound of Ryan turning on the couch. She gets up for water. In the doorway, she pauses. He's on his back, one arm flung over his face, the other draped across his stomach like a man who finally gave his body permission to be heavy. He looks younger like this, which she knows is an illusion, but which nonetheless draws a small ache out of her. She returns to bed, swallows the water, and lies back down. She remembers nothing of the exact day in the old calendar when the marriage bent into an angle that couldn't be unfurled. She remembers the month, the sense of being measured and falling short. She remembers the way she began to narrate her own absence to herself so the absence wouldn't surprise her when it arrived. The Evelyn she is now refuses that plot. She falls asleep like a person making a reservation for tomorrow. Morning reveals itself in increments. 7 a.m. brings the smell of toast. 7:10, the light on her closed eyelids brightens. 7:15, she hears the soft clink of the good plates. 7:20, a knock light, twice. "Come in," she says, and her voice surprises her uncreased, intact. Ryan opens the door just enough to be consultation, not invasion. "I made breakfast," he says, as if confessing to a mischief. Also, Hugh called 6 times. Margaret's already in armor. She sits up, and he lifts a spatula like a white flag. "Pancakes. You can't possibly have pancakes. I can," he says. "They are edible and roundish." She laughs, and the laugh tastes like oxygen. "Give me 10 minutes. I'll join you." He nods and vanishes, and she sits in the quiet, palm pressed to the pillow's shallow heat. She doesn't know what she will decide in 26 days. She knows only that today, the morning is not an enemy. That counts. At the table, they eat in a sequence that pretends to be ritual. Margaret returns from a call with Hugh, eyes bright as if she has jogged a mile with only her wit. He is dramatic. She reports. He is offended. He is rehearsing a tribunal. He is wrong. Ryan squeezes her hand. "Thank you. Don't thank me for telling an old man the ocean is wet," she says, then looks at Evelyn. "You okay? I am. Practicing." Evelyn says, "Good." Margaret says, pouring syrup onto her plate with exactness. "Practice is how we teach the body to trust tomorrow." The phone on the counter buzzes. Ryan checks it. Face unreadable. Board moved the meeting to 10, he says, then adds, "I'm ready." "You are," Margaret says. "And you're allowed to be scared while ready." The world tries to make those two fight. Don't let it. After breakfast, they disperse Evelyn to her draft, Ryan to his suit, Margaret to her theater of influence. At 9:40, Ryan catches Evelyn as she's putting on her coat. "Thank you," he says, "for not running." "I'm not running," she says. "I am walking with a map you don't get to draw." He nods. "I'll wait at the corners," he says. And she almost smiles. "Don't wait," she says. "Walk your part." "I am," he says. And when he leaves, his posture isn't a performance, it's a decision. Evelyn watches him go and then looks at the table where the lemon jar glows like a restrained sun. She picks up her bag and heads to the door. On her way out, she stops at the couch, smooths the blanket without meaning to, and thinks later, not promise, not threat in orientation. The door clicks. The apartment exhales. The day begins. The morning breaks cold. The kind of blue light that warns the day will require courage. The Blake estate lies on the edge of the city, half forest, half fortress, windows like judgment, halls lined with ancestors who never lost an argument because they were always the ones writing the records. Margaret calls it the Museum of Obedience. Today, the museum has summoned them both. Evelyn knows about the summons before Ryan says a word. The tone of his voice at breakfast carries it too calm, like glass before a storm. "Hugh called," he says, buttering toast with unnecessary precision. "Of course he did," Margaret mutters. The patriarch never sleeps when there's someone to scold. Evelyn looks between them. "Do you have to go?" "Yes," Ryan says, "and you should come." Margaret's eyes narrow, mother's intuition flashing. He wants you both in the same room. He wants theater. You'll give him truth instead. Evelyn hesitates. "I'm not sure what I am to this family anymore." Ryan sets the knife down. "You're what I choose. That's enough for today." The sentence lands heavy, not as romance, but as a decision still learning how to stand. She nods. "Then let's go." The car ride to the estate is a study in silence. The wipers flick twice. The heater hums. Margaret sits in the back seat like an ambassador armed with moral superiority and a thermos of tea. Ryan drives. Evelyn watches the city dissolve into wet trees. Each turn of the road feels like a countdown to something inevitable. When they arrive, the iron gates recognize the license plate and swing open reluctantly. The mansion looms, pale stone and old money. Every window lit, though it's mid-morning, a house allergic to shadows. Hugh Blake is waiting in the doorway, coat immaculate, cane polished to the point of metaphor. "Punctuality," he says as they step inside. "At least one virtue remains in the bloodline." Margaret kisses his cheek without warmth. "Good morning, Father. Is it?" he says, and his eyes slide to Ryan. "We'll see." Evelyn feels the house watch her. She's been here before birthdays, board dinners, but memory refuses to fetch details. All she remembers is a piano that no one played and laughter that never quite reached the ceiling. Hugh leads them to the study, an enormous room of mahogany and ego. A fire burns unnecessarily. The heat makes the air thick. 2 portraits dominate the wall. Men who look like Ryan but older, colder, carved from discipline. Hugh gestures to the chairs opposite his desk. Sit. Ryan obeys. Margaret does not. She walks to the window, the rebel's version of obedience. Evelyn stands beside Ryan, choosing solidarity over comfort. Hugh adjusts his cufflinks before speaking. A small ritual of superiority. You made a spectacle, he says to Ryan, publicly dissolving a profitable partnership, paying penalties to satisfy private shame. Tell me, what kind of leader lets his personal life dictate corporate decisions? The kind who intends to sleep at night? Ryan says quietly. Hugh snorts. Sleep is for employees. Legacy is not built by conscience. Margaret turns from the window, eyes sharp. Legacy without conscience is tyranny with better tailoring. Hugh ignores her. You were raised in this house to know better. We don't wash laundry in public. We don't let women. His glance cuts to Evelyn determined strategy. Evelyn stiffens but doesn't flinch. I didn't determine anything, she says. I lost 2 years of memory and woke up in a life built on damage control. Ryan decided to stop the bleeding. Hugh taps his cane. Ah, so the patient has opinions now. Always had them. Margaret says, you just never listened. Ryan interjects before the air can spark. Enough. I made the decision. The contracts are terminated. The payments are done. If the board wants my resignation, they can have it. The old man's eyes flash. Don't flatter yourself, boy. You are still the company's face whether you sit in the chair or not. You carry our name. Ryan's voice hardens. Then I'll redefine what it means. Hugh stands, cane striking the floor. You think you're free because you love, because you play house with a woman who can't remember your sins. Let me remind you, love doesn't balance ledgers. Family keeps the lights on. Evelyn rises slowly. Family also turns them off when it forgets what it's lighting. The sentence drops like an uninvited truth. Margaret hides a smile behind her hand. Ryan looks at her, his wife. His stranger and something like pride flickers through the exhaustion. Hugh glares at Evelyn, then turns back to his grandson. You will undo this. Call Gray. Salvage what's left. No, Ryan says simply. I won't. You'd throw away decades for what a woman's forgiveness. Ryan's jaw tightens. No, for my own. The old man steps closer, anger bright as glass. You were born to lead this family. Without you, Blake Industries will become a sentimental charity. Then maybe it will finally deserve its name, Ryan says. Blake means bright, not ruthless. Hugh's cane slams against the desk. Do you defy your bloodline? Margaret answers before Ryan can. He perfects it. The silence that follows is cathedral deep. The fire crackles like applause that isn't sure it's allowed. Hugh exhales slowly, sits back down, and says the line that's been waiting for decades. Then you are no longer my successor. Ryan nods once, almost gently. Then I am finally your son. For a moment, even the portraits look shocked. They leave the study without ceremony. Margaret walks between them, holding her tea like a victory flag. Well, she says as the door shuts behind them, that went about as well as reason allows. Evelyn exhales for the first time in 10 minutes. Her hands shake slightly. She hides them in her pockets. Ryan's face is unreadable relief, braided with loss. Outside, the air feels lighter, thinner, almost kind. He stops by the car and looks back at the mansion. I've lived my whole life trying to be the man who'd be proud in that room, he says. Now I think the only way to win was to walk out. Evelyn touches his arm. Then you won. He looks at her, eyes tired but alive. You didn't have to defend me. I wasn't defending you, she says. I was defending language. He used love like an insult. That earns her a real smile. You'd make a good lawyer. I prefer words that heal instead of bill, she says, and he laughs softly, tension finally breaking. Margaret claps her hands once. Children, stop philosophizing in the driveway. We have earned lunch. They drive back toward the city, radio off, road unspooling like a quiet apology. That afternoon, the apartment feels smaller but safer. Ryan changes into jeans, tosses his suit jacket over a chair, and sits on the couch like a man remembering how furniture works. Evelyn brews tea. The normalcy feels radical. I think he means it, she says, handing him a cup. About the successor thing, I know, Ryan says, and I think I'm relieved. She sits beside him. What happens to the company Margaret owns half the voting shares? He says, she'll hold the line. The board will posture. Eventually, they'll realize integrity looks good on quarterly reports. And Hugh, he'll stew, Ryan says. Then find someone else to groom. Maybe that's mercy. Evelyn nods. The tea is hot enough to anchor her. You didn't tell him about us, she says. He smiles faintly. What about us? Whatever this is, she says. I expected him to insult me more specifically. I protected what I don't understand yet, he says. It's the first honest protection I have managed. She looks at him, searching for the man she married and the one she might choose again. You really have changed. Not enough, he says, but enough to start over, if you ever wanted to. The sentence hovers. She doesn't touch it. Later, the doorbell rings. Ryan opens it to find a courier holding a small envelope embossed with the Blake crest. He signs, opens it at the counter, inside a single page. Effective immediately, the Blake Family Trust will review the disposition of leadership assets. Ryan Hugh Blake's inheritance will be suspended, pending review. At the bottom, Hugh's signature, elegant as a wound. Ryan folds the letter, sets it aside, and pours himself water. No reaction, just a quiet exhale. Evelyn reads it over his shoulder. He really brought the hammer. He brought paperwork. Ryan says, I'll bring persistence. Margaret walks in from the balcony, sees the letter, and smirks. He thinks he's punishing you. He's actually promoting you to adult. Ryan kisses her forehead. Thanks, Mom. She waves it off. Thank me when you buy new drapes. Those are hideous. Evelyn hides a smile. The tension softens. Night settles like the final paragraph of a long day. The three of them eat takeout from cartons. The grand strategy of comfort food. Margaret tells stories about Hugh's youth, how he once proposed to a pianist and then fled because her family sold violins instead of stocks. Evelyn laughs until she forgets to worry. When Margaret retires to her room, the apartment dims to 2 lamps and the city's hum. Ryan sits at the table, running his thumb along the rim of a wine glass he isn't drinking from. Does it feel like freedom yet? Evelyn asks. Not yet, he says. Freedom's louder than I expected. It keeps echoing. Echoes fade, she says. He looks at her, something steady in his eyes. You said once you wanted peace, not safety. Is this that? She thinks, peace isn't a place. It's the permission to stop defending the wrong things. Then maybe we're close, he says. She meets his gaze, lets the silence draw breath between them. We still have our deadline, she reminds. 2 more weeks, then the papers. He nods. If that's still what you want, I don't know what I want yet, she admits. But I like that I get to decide it. That's enough for me, he says. They sit like that, side by side. 2 people not rushing the chapter they're in. 3 days later, a delivery arrives at Hayes and Nin Flowers and a note addressed to Evelyn Hart. Mason finds it first and calls her over. From a fan, he teases. She opens the card. The handwriting is neat, familiar. For the woman who reminded me that forgiveness is work. R. No signature beyond that. Just 3 lilies. White, not red. She smiles without meaning to. A client, she says. And Mason raises an eyebrow but says nothing. That evening, she stays late at the office finishing the campaign draft. The final line appears almost on its own. Healing is not a miracle. It's maintenance. She stares at it, hears Ryan's voice saying, I'm trying to unlearn the man who thought he could keep you by standing between you and every exit. She presses save. Meanwhile, in a different part of the city, Hugh Blake stands at his study window, reading an internal report. Margaret's voice echoes in his head. Legacy without conscience is tyranny. He looks at the family crest on the wall, then at the letter he sent. For a second, he almost picks up the phone, then pride wins, as it always has. But in the corner of the room, the fire burns unevenly, spitting sparks. The portraits seem to disapprove. The old man sighs. Perhaps the boy had a point. He murmurs to the empty room. At home, Ryan returns from a run. He finds Evelyn sitting on the couch, laptop open, soft jazz humming. You're home early, she says. Meetings canceled, boards recalibrating, he says. Apparently morality's trending. She smiles. Good for business. He sits across from her, nervous energy under his skin. Evelyn, can I show you something? He opens his phone, pulls up a message from Priya, a new contract draft. I'm restructuring the company charter, adding an ethics clause. It'll require leadership to disclose conflicts of interest, personal or professional. Big move, she says. It's symbolic, he admits. But symbols are how we teach the next version of ourselves what we learned too late. She reads the clause. Impressed. You're writing yourself into accountability. I'm writing you into the future, he says before he can edit it. The words hang there, awkward and sincere. She closes the laptop. Don't write me. Ask me. I am, he says quietly. Stay. Not because we forget, because we don't. Evelyn looks at him for a long time. Then she stands, walks to the window, and looks out at the city. Her city now, not his. Ask me again in 2 weeks. He nods. I will. She smiles faintly. Then I'll answer honestly. Later that night, while the city hums with its neon insomnia, Evelyn lies awake listening to Ryan's steady breathing from the couch. She imagines her past self jealous, brittle, afraid, and feels a small, strange mercy toward her. The woman who burned things down did so because she didn't know how to prune. The woman she is now might. She turns to the window. The reflection shows her face overlaid with the faint outline of Ryan asleep behind her, a visual metaphor she doesn't need but accepts anyway. Outside, dawn begins somewhere behind the sky. She whispers, not to him, not to herself, but to whatever listens in between. I don't remember the beginning, but I remember this. The pillow beside her is warm again, and for the first time, warmth feels like peace, not fever. There was a time when she thought peace meant forgetting. Now she knows peace is remembering, without wanting to punish anyone for it. He lost an empire to earn a conscience. She lost 2 years to earn a choice. And maybe that's what love really is, not the merging of two people, but the slow unlearning of what hurt them before they met again. The fire on the pillow is gone now, but if you press your ear close enough, you can still hear the heartbeat that refused to die under the smoke.